If there's anything that needs to be debunked, it's the idea that red meat is bad for you. And so I do not believe in the small associations and overgeneralizations that the studies that are used to say red meat is bad for you.
Now, if we're talking about the absolute best food to help you heal, repair, especially after exercise, but from anything like stress, trauma, surgery, hands down, the answer would be red meat. Now, I recently did a video talking about different proteins which are a little bit better for certain health conditions. Maybe something's better for anti-inflammatory, etc. But when we're talking about generalized healing and repair, animal meat, and specifically red meat, is at the top of the list. Because not only does red meat have the most protein, it also has some other amazing things that I'm going to share with you today, which is going to blow you away. Over 30 years of practice, I've never met one person who ever had an allergy to meat, okay? They might have had an allergy to peanuts or eggs or seafood or shellfish or wheat or soy, but not red meat.
Well, so, maybe Dr. Berg hasn't been in practice since the advent of something called the Lone Star tick and alpha-gal allergy. Because actually you can be allergic to red meat, not from birth, but as an acquired infection from a tick. Yeah, it can be very difficult to figure out, actually. Often people end up in the emergency room with hives or even their throat closing up or even in anaphylactic shock. And it takes a little bit of sleuthing out. In fact, some people end up having multiple trips to the emergency room before it's figured out that there was an exposure to a tick if you were out hiking or camping. And if you do that a lot, it can be hard to figure that out. Typically, someone comes to the emergency room, it's not known why they had that. They end up going to an allergist because the symptoms that you had are the symptoms of a severe allergy. And the allergist will do a blood test to look for something called alpha-gal. Alpha-gal is a protein that actually the tick makes you allergic to. It's in red meat. In mammalian meat. So you could have lived 50 years eating red meat, no problem, and then if you had this tick bite, it sensitizes you and then you become allergic to meat. So I have to just shade that, true, I hadn't seen any red meat allergy, and it's common to get other allergies until this Lone Star tick and alpha-gal story emerged in just the last few years. Now the good news is for most people that alpha-gal effect, the antibodies will diminish, will decrease over time, and most people after a period of years, will be able to reintroduce the meat, the mammalian meat. But now if you have undiagnosed allergies, nobody knows why, and it's possible that you've been out exposed to a tick, you'd want to raise that up with your doctor if you've had hives or anaphylaxis or throat closing.
And just the fact that meat has been villainized, right, as the bad guy. You should start eating less red meat as a way to get healthy. Or overall, it's going to be better for climate change because we know the cows are destroying the climate, which is completely ridiculous. But right there, that one argument, the fact that mainstream is telling you not to do it, the truth is going to be in the exact opposite direction. In fact, it's difficult to heal and repair your body without animal protein. And just the fact that meat has been villainized, right, as the bad guy. You should start eating less red meat as a way to get healthy. Or overall, it's going to be better for climate change because we know the cows are destroying the climate, which is completely ridiculous. But right there, that one argument, the fact that mainstream is telling you not to do it, the truth is going to be in the exact opposite direction. In fact, it's difficult to heal and repair your body without animal protein. Now, in past videos, I talked about eggs, and I eat a lot of eggs, and eggs are awesome, okay? But if we compare eggs to meat, there is some significant differences, and that's what I want to talk about today. I've also talked about the benefit of having salmon and fish, which I also have once or twice a week. And salmon and sardines are very high in omega-3, which are good, but beef, red meat, has more protein and it has a lot of other things that can help you heal if we look at the whole picture. I will say, out of all the things that are involved in the healing process and the repair process, we need amino acids. We need bioavailable protein, which is going to be animal protein, and we need concentrated protein. And if we just compare red meat to eggs, red meat is twice as concentrated in amino acids. It also has 1.5 times greater iron, 2.2 times greater magnesium, 3.7 times greater amounts of zinc, and 50 times more vitamin B3 than eggs. It has double the amount of B1, 4 times the amount of B6, twice the amount of B12, and 4 times the amount of vitamin K, and 5 times the amount of omega-3 fatty acids.
These are super athletes, and we're talking about winning a race with a microsecond, or, because everyone is very, very a great athlete. So I'm not convinced yet that red meat is better than eggs just because of this change in nutrition. I think they're both equally good, and unless there's some data shown, in some sort of randomized trial where you're comparing eggs, and well, that probably hasn't happened to red meat in terms of healing. The content, the components of the food is one thing, but then whether all of those components have a different effect given all of the other things happening in the body is a different thing.
The ratios are going to be better. And of course, I'm not talking about processed meat from factory farms. I'm talking about grass-fed beef. Even if you compare that to chickens that are pasture-raised, they're still fed grains, which kind of throw off the omega-3 to omega-6 ratios. Now, that being said, eggs are also a good source of protein. But as a side note, beef liver has 73 times more vitamin A than eggs. Now, there's another nutrient that eggs have that's better than beef, and that would be choline. It has a little bit more than double the amount of B2 and a lot more folate. It has 12 times the amount of folate than in beef. Beef has something else that I think is like the X factor. Actually, it's 4 things I'm going to mention. And the first one is carnitine. It's this thing that helps transport fat into your cells, into the energy factory called the mitochondria, to help you get more energy. So without carnitine, the cells can't get energy from fat. Carnitine gives you that quick energy when you're exercising. And since we're talking about a really important transport of fuel to the mitochondria, that is essential for healing and repair of your tissues. So not only do we need all the essential amino acids as the raw material for proteins, not just for your muscles, but for all your biochemistry, we also need other things as well, like those vitamins I just mentioned, which are cofactors, but also the shuttle to allow this raw material to give our bodies energy. So if we compare like 100 grams of red meat versus 100 grams of eggs, the amount of carnitine would be like 150 milligrams versus only 7 milligrams for eggs. But as far as the food that has the most carnitine, it would be lamb. But beef is number 2. So this beef red meat is at the top of the list as far as giving you a good source of carnitine. Then we have creatine. Creatine gives us that quick energy. It can be used as fuel for very, very high, explosive, intense movements. Both exercise and physical activity needs this creatine. So this is why you see a lot of bodybuilders and weightlifters and people who do exercise taking this as a supplement. Well, guess what? Out of all the foods that you could possibly eat on planet Earth, red meat from beef has the highest amount of creatine. So creatine is just going to give you more energy to heal and repair from exercise. Now, the next compound I'm going to talk about, which, by the way, red meat from beef has the absolute highest source, is called carnosine. It buffers this pH, okay, from the lactic acid, the acidity in the muscle. So if you're exercising, this compound comes along and helps neutralize this acid to allow you to exercise longer, because the pH messes with some of the oxygen in the muscle. So it buffers it. It acts as an antioxidant, and it's also going to help the recovery after exercise and just healing in general of your whole body. And it also even decreases something called AGEs. And I'm going to give you this term. I don't know if you've ever heard it before. It's called advanced glycation end products. And basically, this is a fancy term for when you have this sugar molecule that's locked up with a protein molecule and it's kind of stuck in the body. So these AGEs kind of plug up the body and they interfere with the function, and they usually come from someone that's consuming too much sugar. Well, guess what? This compound helps get rid of those things. So it's considered kind of an anti-aging thing. It can help you just live longer. But out of all the foods that you can eat, red meat from beef has the most carnosine. And then we have coenzyme Q10. What is that? That is a nutrient that helps the mitochondria, the energy factory, where food gets converted to energy. Now, and the best source of coenzyme Q10 is organ meats, like beef liver for sure, but it's also in the meat as well. It's also in fish, it's in eggs, but it's mostly in organ meats.
So you may have heard of coenzyme Q10 because that is a supplement given to people who are taking statin drugs, because the statins will reduce the generation or creation of anything in that cholesterol pathway, including the CoQ10. Well, you know, these are all the components of why red meat is so great, and why protein and animal source protein is so full of nutrition and energy, and in true form, Dr. Berg goes through every possible detail for it, and the amount in the red meat versus egg. I'm still not convinced that means that red meat's better.
When I was very, very sick and I stumbled on this ketogenic diet, low carb diet, buffalo burger was my first food that I ate that I felt so good. I actually healed my body on buffalo burger and hamburger. In fact, to this day, I still feel the best when I consume red meat in the form of hamburger. Now, I will do steak and things like that, but I do very, very well on red meat in general. And if you're trying to heal, especially after exercise, or you're trying to repair from some type of injury or trauma, you should really consider increasing more red meat and having it more often. And the cool thing about hamburger is it has a little bit more fat than some of the like leaner cuts of steak. And there's only two conditions that you need to know about relating to the difficulty of digesting red meat. People that don't like red meat really have low stomach acids. And as someone ages, they get older, they will lose their stomach acids and the taste for red meat goes down. They can't really tolerate it. And there's this very simple solution. Just add some betaine hydrochloride to the meal. I'll put a link down below. You just take 3 to 5 before a meal. Okay, you don't have to take it forever. Just take it for a month. And what will happen is it'll start to increase the acidity in your stomach. You'll start to digest the red meat much better and break it down and start feeling better. But when people get older, they just have a more difficult time because they don't have the stomach acid. And they're also going to have, as a parallel thing, gas, more indigestion, definitely acid reflux, GERD. Those are all signs of low stomach acid. So instead of avoiding eating it, just fix the stomach's ability to digest it. And the one last point, there is a certain genetic condition where someone has a hard time getting rid of iron. They tend to accumulate iron. And so if that is you, then maybe red meat is not the answer. You would want to do maybe poultry or maybe eggs, different protein sources that have lower amounts of iron. But for everyone else, I highly recommend red meat. Even if you're going through your menstrual cycle and you're losing blood, boy, red meat is going to be the best way to fix it because you're probably slightly anemic, and red meat has the best iron and B12 in the best forms.
In my experience, people adjust to eating meat when they start a keto diet, even if at first they're unable to tolerate it or haven't had it for a while. Same with eggs. Some people can't eat eggs, and then they realize over time, after not eating carbs for a while, their body actually changes. I think the stomach acidity changes. We did a study some years ago with people with heartburn, refractory heartburn, and the heartburn went away in everyone in just 5 days. And that's a pretty recurring thing. The heartburn goes away almost as reliable as the weight going down, the fat weight going down. I think he's making a reference to hemochromatosis, which is iron overload. And it's a relatively uncommon condition that you wouldn't want to have a lot of red meat that contains iron, because your body has difficulty getting rid of the iron. And so that's what he was talking about, hemochromatosis. So I'm not convinced by what Dr. Berg showed us, that the red meat is better than eggs for healing. I mean, the content is different, but it would depend how much of it you're eating and what context. But the point here, I think, for the video was to reiterate that red meat is actually good for you, and to kind of get rid of the internet chatter about red meat being so bad for you. And so in that regard, this is a great video that shows all the things that red meat has. To bring it up to speed, there is an acquired allergy to red meat or mammalian protein called alpha-gal that is not common at all, but it happens. And I've seen it in my practice. And if you're having an unknown reaction, you don't know why, you're getting hives or even ending up in the emergency room, then with an allergic response, you might consider that it is a red meat allergy or some other type of allergy. But in general, Dr. Berg does great videos on the detail, the nuance. To me, this is just another great reason to eat red meat and eggs, and that not necessarily one is better than the other.